Hi, my name is Claire and I'm 29 years old. People see my smile and think life's been easy, but behind it was a battle I fought with my own family. During dinner one night, my dad looked straight at me and said, "This family would have been better off without you." The room went silent. My heart sank until Grandma Eleanor stood up. Her voice trembled, but her words were fire. "You should be ashamed. When your mother was sick, who took care of her? When you were broke, who paid your bills? Claire did. Without her, this family would have fallen apart." No one spoke. My parents just stared, speechless. Grandma sat down, held my hand and whispered, "Don't ever forget your worth." And she stood and said something that left everyone frozen. Before I tell you what happened next, please like this video and comment where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories reach. And don't forget to subscribe, because the truth behind this story will remind you, sometimes being pushed away is exactly what pushes you toward your destiny. I still remember the sound of the rain that night. It tapped against the windows, steady and soft, while inside the dining room, my family was falling apart. Dinner was supposed to be peaceful. My mother had set the table perfectly, as always, white plates, silver cutlery, and her favorite blue napkins folded like tiny triangles. But peace never lasted long in our house. The argument started over something small. My brother Caleb had been talking about his new job, how his company might send him abroad, and everyone was praising him. My father nodded proudly. My mother's smile stretched so wide, I thought it might stay there forever. Then she turned to me. "Claire, what have you been doing lately?" she asked, her voice sweet but sharp underneath. I told her about my new project, how I'd been working long hours trying to make it succeed. I hoped maybe this time she'd be proud, but instead, she sighed. "Still wasting time on that." The room went quiet. My fork clinked against my plate. I forced a smile, pretending it didn't hurt. "It's not a waste, Mom. I'm doing well." She cut me off. "Doing well? Claire, you've been chasing silly dreams for years. Look at your brother. Look at what he's achieved." Caleb chuckled softly, pretending to be humble. "Mom, don't compare us," he said, though I could tell he enjoyed every second of it. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I didn't want to argue. I never did, but something in me snapped that night. Maybe you'd actually hear me if you stopped comparing me to him for once. My mother's face changed. Her smile disappeared. My father looked up from his plate, his expression darkening. "What did you just say?" my mother asked. I said, "Maybe if you stopped treating me like I'm never good enough." That was it. She slammed her hand on the table so hard the glasses shook. "Is greater than enough, Claire? You never listen. You always twist things to make yourself the victim. You're ungrateful, stubborn, and impossible to please." I froze. My chest tightened. I could feel my hands trembling under the table. Then, in a voice so cold I can still hear it in my dreams, she said, "Is greater than this family would have been better off without you." The room went completely still. Even the rain outside seemed to stop. I looked around. My father avoided my eyes. Caleb pressed his lips together, pretending to look uncomfortable, but there was a faint smirk hiding there. I wanted to speak. I wanted to ask why she would say that to her own daughter, but no words came out. My throat felt like it was closing. My mother leaned back in her chair, breathing heavily. "You've brought nothing but disappointment, Claire. You drain the life out of everyone around you." My father finally muttered, "Linda, that's enough." But his voice was weak. He didn't mean it. He never did. I felt tears building, but I didn't want to cry, not in front of them. Not again. So I took a deep breath, forcing the words out as calmly as I could. "Is greater than you really think that, Mom? That you'd be better off without me?" She didn't answer. She just looked away. The silence stretched. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall, tick, 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 like it was counting down to something. Then a sound broke through the heavy air. A soft scrape of wood against the floor. Grandma Eleanor was standing. She moved slowly, steadying herself with her cane. Her white hair shimmered under the chandelier light. She didn't speak right away, she just looked around the table. At my mother. At my father. At Caleb. And finally, at me. Her eyes lingered on me a little longer, warm but full of something else too, something sharp, almost fierce. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm, but it carried weight. "Is greater than Linda," she said softly, Before you say another word to that girl, perhaps it's time someone in this family told the truth. No one moved. No one breathed. My mother's jaw tightened. My father looked uneasy. Caleb frowned, confused. And me? I sat there in stunned silence, not knowing what Grandma Eleanor meant, but deep down, I could feel it. Something was about to change. When I was little, I thought love meant silence. If I stayed quiet, if I didn't make mistakes, if I didn't ask for too much, maybe they would love me more. I grew up in a house where words had rules. You could only speak when spoken to. You could only be praised if you were perfect. And perfection, in our home, always looked like my brother, Caleb. He was the golden child. His trophies lined the living room shelf. His school photos filled every frame. Mom would clap at his smallest achievements. "That's my boy," she'd say proudly. When I got good grades, she'd barely nod. "You're supposed to," she'd say. "That's nothing special." I learned early that I was the shadow in someone else's story. The quiet background. The one they'd forget to mention. At school, teachers would ask, "Oh, you're Caleb's sister?" And I'd smile politely, pretending it didn't sting. Even birthdays felt like rehearsed plays. Mom would bake Caleb's favorite cake, and if I asked for mine, she'd say, "We don't have time for two." Dad wasn't cruel, he was just distant. He worked long hours, and when he was home, he'd read the newspaper, half listening when I spoke. His favorite line was, "Your brother's setting an example, Claire. Follow it." So I followed. I followed so hard that I lost track of myself. I joined clubs because Caleb had. I studied the same subjects. I even laughed like him when Mom was watching. But no matter what I did, it was never enough to earn that proud look in her eyes. And yet, there was one person who always saw me. Grandma Eleanor. She lived with us for years, quietly observing everything. While my parents argued or ignored me, she'd call me into her room, hand me a cup of tea, and talk to me like I mattered. Her voice was gentle but firm. "You have something they don't see, Claire. You have heart, and one day that will matter more than anything." Sometimes I'd tell her I felt invisible. She'd smile softly. "Invisible things can still hold great power, my dear. The wind is invisible, yet it can move the strongest tree." I never forgot that. When I turned 16, I tried to make my parents proud again. I entered an art competition and spent weeks painting late into the night. I poured every piece of myself into that canvas, every tear, every dream, every bit of love I still had for them. I won second place. I came home smiling, holding the ribbon like a miracle. Mom barely looked up from her phone. "Oh, second?" she said. "Well, Caleb never came second." That was the day I stopped trying to impress her. From then on, I focused on surviving quietly, graduating, getting a small apartment, building a life far away from their noise. I worked 2 jobs to stay afloat, and even when things were hard, I found peace in the silence. But peace has a way of making you believe you're healed until something breaks it again. Years passed before I heard from them. Then, one afternoon, my phone rang. It was Mom. Her voice was polite, too polite. "We're having a family meeting," she said. "You should come. It's important." I almost said no, but some small, foolish part of me thought, maybe, just maybe, they missed me. So I said I'd come. That single decision would pull me right back into the house where I once felt invisible. Back to the table where silence hurt more than words. Back to the family that never really saw me until Grandma Eleanor stood up that night. The drive back to my parents' house felt longer than I remembered. The same narrow road lined with tall oak trees, the same old streetlights that flickered weakly at dusk. It had been almost 3 years since I last visited, but nothing seemed to have changed except me. My hands gripped the steering wheel as memories rushed back like ghosts. Every argument, every silent dinner, every time I walked out of that house in tears, promising myself I wouldn't come back. Yet here I was. When I reached the gate, the lights were already on. The house looked perfect, as always. Mom's flowers bloomed neatly in the front garden, and Dad's car sat parked exactly in line with the driveway edge he hated when it wasn't. Everything screamed control, order, perfection. I parked, took a deep breath, and stepped out. The air smelled of fresh paint. They'd repainted the front porch. Caleb's car was already there. Of course it was. When I knocked, Mom opened the door almost immediately, as if she'd been waiting. "Claire," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, "you look different." Hi, Mom, I said softly. She hugged me, quick and stiff, then pulled back. Come in, everyone's waiting. Inside, the house smelled like roasted chicken and lemon polish. My father sat at the head of the table, reading something on his tablet. Caleb was leaning casually against the wall, phone in hand, looking as confident as ever. Claire, he said brightly. Look who decided to show up. I forced a small smile. You invited me. He chuckled. Right. Didn't think you'd actually come. That small comment told me everything I needed to know. Whatever this meeting was, it wasn't about reconciliation. Something was off. We sat at the table. Mom had prepared dinner, but it felt more like a performance than a meal. Every napkin was perfectly folded, every plate placed with precision. Grandma Eleanor sat at the far end, quiet as always, her eyes following everything without a word. Once everyone was seated, my mother cleared her throat. Well, she began, clasping her hands, we've gathered tonight because your father and I have made an important decision about the family. My heart sank. Important decision. That never meant anything good. We've spoken to our lawyer, she continued, and decided it's time to update the will. We want to make sure things are clear. Caleb's lips twitched into a small, smug smile. Mom went on, her tone light and rehearsed. Your brother will inherit the family home and a portion of your father's savings. You, Claire, are independent. You've always managed on your own, so we know you'll understand. I blinked, unsure I'd heard right. Understand? I repeated slowly. You're leaving everything to Caleb? It's not about leaving everything, she said quickly. It's about what makes sense. You live far away, and Caleb will stay here. He'll take care of things. I could feel the heat rising in my chest. So, you're cutting me out because I moved on with my life? Don't be dramatic, she said. You chose to distance yourself. We just accepted it. Dad said nothing. He didn't even look up. Then Caleb spoke, his voice calm but dripping with condescension. Claire, you know how things are. Mom and Dad just want what's fair. Fair? I said, my voice trembling. Fair would be treating both your children equally. That's when Mom's tone shifted. Her fake calm vanished. You've done nothing for this family, Claire. Nothing. Caleb has always been the one helping, supporting, showing up. You've been a disappointment from the start. I felt my throat tighten. My palms went cold. Then she said it again. Is greater than, honestly, this family would have been better off without you. The words hit harder this time, because now they weren't said in anger, they were said like a fact. My father stayed silent. Caleb looked away, hiding a small grin. And at the far end of the table, Grandma Eleanor slowly placed her fork down. The faint clink echoed across the room. Her eyes met mine for a long moment, then shifted to my mother. She didn't speak. Not yet. But the look on her face said more than any words could. Something was coming. The silence after my mother's words was almost unbearable. I could hear the clock ticking on the wall and the faint hiss of the rain outside. My chest ached, and every breath felt heavy. I wanted to leave. I wanted to grab my bag and walk straight out that door, but something inside me kept me frozen in my seat. Maybe it was hope. Maybe it was pride. Maybe I was just tired of running. I looked at my mother. Do you even hear yourself? I said quietly. Her arms were crossed, her eyes sharp. I hear myself perfectly, Claire. You've done nothing but distance yourself from this family. You made your choices. Don't act like a victim now. I turned to my father. And you agree with her? He sighed, not meeting my eyes. Your mother just wants what's best. Don't turn this into something it isn't. A small laugh escaped my lips, half disbelief, half pain. You both never see it, do you? You never see what your words do. Caleb groaned. Here we go again. The emotional speech. Claire, no one's attacking you. We're just being honest. I looked at him. You love this, don't you? Watching me get humiliated. He raised his eyebrows. Don't be ridiculous. But that smirk, small and smug, never left his face. That was the moment Grandma Eleanor moved. The sound of her chair sliding back was soft, but it cut through the tension like thunder. Everyone turned to her. She stood slowly, leaning on her cane, her frail hands steady. Her eyes, sharp and knowing, moved from one face to another. Enough, she said. The word wasn't loud, but it silenced the room instantly. Linda, she said to my mother, you will stop speaking to that girl like she's a stranger in her own family. My mother blinked in shock. Mother, please don't start. But Grandma raised a hand. No, I've listened long enough. For years, I've watched you tear this child down while you raised that boy on a pedestal. You think I haven't noticed? Caleb's smirk faded. Grandma, quiet, she snapped. You speak when spoken to. It was the first time I had ever heard her voice carry that much power. Even my father looked startled. Grandma's gaze returned to my mother. I've seen the truth of this family for a long time. You hide behind your pride, Linda. You think your cruelty is discipline, but all it's done is poison the air in this house. My mother's face reddened. You don't understand, Mother. Claire has done nothing but try. Grandma interrupted. And you've crushed her every time she reached for your approval. Tell me, what kind of mother calls her own daughter a burden? The room went quiet again. My heart pounded so loud, I thought they could hear it. Grandma turned to my father next. And you, always silent. You watched it happen and said nothing. A man's duty isn't just to keep the peace, it's to protect what's right. He looked down, his jaw tight. For once he had no defense. Then Grandma looked at me. Her eyes softened. You've carried pain you never deserved, Claire. And I should have spoken sooner. I should have stopped them. I felt my throat tighten. Grandma. She shook her head gently. No, my dear. Don't speak yet. There's something you don't know. Something none of them ever told you. Mom stiffened instantly. Mother, stop it. Don't start dragging up the past. Grandma's voice hardened. The past is already here, Linda. And it's time Claire knows why. Everyone froze. Caleb frowned. What are you talking about? Grandma looked at me again, her voice trembling slightly. It is greater than before you were born. Things in this family weren't as perfect as they seemed, and some choices were made, choices that changed everything. I stared at her, confused. What choices? She sighed deeply, as if the weight of years sat on her shoulders. You'll know soon, my dear. But first, everyone at this table needs to remember what real family means, because after tonight, nothing will ever be the same. Her words hung in the air like thunder after lightning. And though she hadn't revealed the truth yet, I could feel it. The walls around every secret were starting to crack. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Only the rain tapping on the windows filled the silence. Grandma Eleanor stood by the table, her hand gripping her cane, her voice trembling but steady. It's time you all know the truth, she said. My mother crossed her arms. Mother, you're overreacting. This isn't necessary. But Grandma didn't even look at her. Her gaze stayed locked on me. Claire, all your life, you've wondered why they treated you differently. Why nothing you did ever felt enough. Why love in this family always came with conditions. My heart started to race. Yes, I whispered. Grandma nodded slowly. It's because you were born into a lie. The words hit me like cold water. A lie? She exhaled, eyes glistening. Before you were born, your father made a mistake, a big one. He was young, foolish, and too proud to admit it. He had another woman in his life before he married your mother. That woman was kind, gentle. But when she got pregnant, your father panicked. He left her, married your mother, and never told anyone the truth. I blinked hard, the air suddenly thick. What are you saying? Grandma's voice cracked. That woman was your mother, Claire, but not the one sitting here now. The room went completely still. My father's face turned pale. Mother, stop. That's enough. But she didn't. No, Robert, it's time. My mother shot up from her seat, her voice shaking with anger. You promised you would never say it. Grandma turned to her sharply. And look where that promise got us: poisoned hearts and a broken child. I felt dizzy. You mean she isn't my real mother? Grandma nodded slowly. Linda couldn't have children. When your father brought you home, she agreed to raise you, but she never forgave him for the betrayal. You became a reminder she couldn't love. The words sank into me like ice. Every cruel look, every harsh word, every time she told me I didn't belong, it all made sense now. My father buried his face in his hands. I thought it was better this way. I thought we could be a family. Grandma's voice trembled. A family built on secrets never lasts. Caleb's mouth fell open. Wait, you mean Claire isn't even my full sister? Grandma looked at him sadly. You share a father, but not a mother. He leaned back, his face pale, whispering, "Oh my God." I couldn't speak. My hands shook. My whole life suddenly felt like a borrowed story. Then Grandma reached for my hand. Her touch was warm. "Claire, listen to me. None of this is your fault. You were never the mistake they were. You've carried their shame without even knowing it." Tears blurred my vision. "Why didn't you tell me before?" "I wanted to protect you," she said softly. "But when I heard your mother say this family would have been better off without you, I couldn't stay silent any longer." The room was still. My mother stared at the floor, her lips trembling. My father couldn't look at me. Finally, Grandma straightened her back and said firmly, "You owe her an apology, both of you. She deserves truth, not bitterness." No one spoke. The clock ticked. The storm outside softened into a drizzle. I stood slowly. My voice was calm, though my heart was breaking. I guess now I know why I always felt like a stranger here. Grandma squeezed my hand. "You have me, my dear, and you have yourself. That's enough to start over." I nodded. "Thank you, Grandma, for finally telling me." As I turned toward the window, lightning flashed, lighting up every stunned face at the table. For the first time in my life, they all looked at me and saw me. And just like that, everyone froze. Because in one night, every truth they'd buried for years had come to light. And there was no going back. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more.